The entire game of AI could collapse any minute. And I'm not the only one saying it. It is now being openly accepted, openly discussed by a large number of mainstream economists and mainstream media houses as well. Everyone is now warning that the business of AI is stacked up like a house of cards. One card falls and the entire structure will come down and fall apart. Now don't scroll away thinking that why should I care about this? It doesn't matter to me. Why should I know about this? It does matter to you and me, because if the AI economy collapses, the entire global economy will be affected and everything around us could come to a grinding halt. This is because there is a dirty secret at the heart of the AI business, which is politely called AI Recursion. The circular funding between tech companies that is artificially pushing up both the revenues of AI companies and also their market value. I'm going to unravel this opaque funding loop, which is almost like a Ponzi scheme that has helped AI companies dominate the world, take over the conversation, drive economic growth, and also boost the stock markets. Here is how we will go about it. First, understand what this AI funding loop is all about. Second, we'll explain why it is being done. Who's gaining from all this? Third, we will look at why this could end up in a mega stock market crash and then a global recession. And finally, why this matters to you and me. But even before we begin, we need to understand how the AI industry actually works, right? So think of ChatGPT, for instance, the most famous of the AI platforms that all of us are familiar with, and most probably all of us have used it and use it regularly. The ChatGPT platform is owned by a company called OpenAI, run by Sam Altman. Now, when you type in a prompt or a query into ChatGPT, it sets off a huge amount of compute for the AI model to think and come up with an answer to your query. But this has to be fast in real time, and for that two key things are needed. Super fast computer chips, much faster than what's in your laptop, and data centers with humongous ability to store and process digital information. Here are the key players that you should know about. The top AI platforms that end users interface with are, of course, OpenAI's ChatGPT, Google's Gemini, Microsoft's Copilot. These three account for 78% of the market right now. These platforms use extremely fast chips. Here, one company dominates, and that's NVIDIA, run by Jensen Huang. It is right now the world's most valuable company, and it controls about 80 to 90% of the world's high-performance chip market, which is needed for AI. A distant second is AMD, run by his cousin, Dr. Lisa Su. AMD's market share right now is just about 6 to 8%, but it is seen as a potential competitor to NVIDIA. Then we have the data centers and cloud companies who form the infrastructure, the backbone, so to speak, of AI. Here, Amazon's AWS or Amazon Web Services is the market leader, followed by Microsoft Azure and Google Cloud. There's a fourth rising player, which is Oracle, with a very small market share right now. But these four control about 2/3 of the cloud and data center market in the world, which is now growing because of AI. Now, this is where the game of circular funding comes into play. Microsoft owns 30% of OpenAI. In return, OpenAI has to give most of its cloud business to Microsoft. In fact, till last year, OpenAI was supposed to only use Microsoft's Azure for the ChatGPT platform. But now, since OpenAI's demand for compute has far outstripped what Microsoft can actually provide, they'll have the first right of refusal. That means every time OpenAI wants to add to its cloud capacity, it has to first ask Microsoft and only go to some other vendor if Microsoft refuses, cannot provide it. So OpenAI now has deals with Google and Amazon to use their cloud services. In the case of Amazon, OpenAI has a pact where Amazon pushes out OpenAI's models to thousands of AWS clients across the world. As a quick aside, remember that Amazon's real money-making business is not the online retail that you and I use. It is actually AWS or Amazon Web Services, which provides cloud computing to businesses. Now, Amazon is obviously not just happy with its business relationship with OpenAI. It wants to set up a counter to this massive presence of ChatGPT and Microsoft Azure in the world of AI. So, Amazon has invested $4 billion in OpenAI's competitor Anthropic, which owns the AI platform Claude. Of course, in return, AWS will be the primary cloud provider to Anthropic. In fact, Google too has invested a big amount in Anthropic, even though it has its own AI platform Gemini. This is because it wants to launch a pincer attack on OpenAI's ChatGPT. Now note what is happening here. Microsoft invests in OpenAI. OpenAI uses some of that money to buy Microsoft's Azure cloud services. So part of the money Microsoft gave as capital to OpenAI is coming back to it as revenue. In fact, roughly 50% or half of OpenAI's core costs is just the Microsoft Azure services it buys. And of course, Microsoft also gains when OpenAI's valuations rise because, as I said, it owns 30% of OpenAI. The bigger circular deal involves OpenAI and NVIDIA. NVIDIA has committed to investing $100 billion in OpenAI over the next few years so that OpenAI can finance its plan to build 10 gigawatts of data center capacity using NVIDIA chips. Adding just 1 gigawatt of data center capacity would require an investment of $50 to $60 billion, out of which roughly $35 billion will be spent on buying NVIDIA chips. So, just the initial phase where NVIDIA will invest $10 billion will bring in $35 billion back as revenue to NVIDIA. Again, notice this circular funding pattern. OpenAI will buy NVIDIA chips with money given to it by NVIDIA itself. Capital investment by NVIDIA will come back to the company and show up as revenue, making its business look good. Meanwhile, the money flowing from NVIDIA into OpenAI will help boost its valuations, making NVIDIA's equity investments in OpenAI even more valuable. The reverse is happening in the deal between OpenAI and NVIDIA's competitor AMD. Here, OpenAI has committed to buying AMD's chips, and in exchange, it will get rights to 160 million AMD shares, almost 10% of the company. So OpenAI buys chips from AMD, AMD's revenues go up sharply, its stock price rises, and OpenAI gains from the share price rise. Finally, here's an example of a three-party circular funding game. Two of the players are again OpenAI and NVIDIA, and the third is the relatively smaller cloud and data center company that I spoke about, Oracle. OpenAI has signed a deal to buy $300 billion worth of cloud computing infrastructure from Oracle over the next few years. Oracle will spend a part of that money to buy NVIDIA chips for its data centers. Now remember, NVIDIA is a virtual monopoly here, and NVIDIA, as I said earlier, will invest in OpenAI. So OpenAI will effectively use NVIDIA's money to buy Oracle's cloud infrastructure, and Oracle in turn will use OpenAI's money to buy NVIDIA's chips to close this circular funding loop. There are many other smaller players involved in this game of circularity, where someone's investment ultimately comes back to them as revenue and boosts both of them, revenue and valuation. So why is this happening? There is a justifiable reason for this. AI's growth requires huge amounts of capital investments, much more than what ordinary traditional investors and lenders like banks can provide. So the big tech players have decided to help each other out because they know that if the AI economy expands, they will ultimately gain from it. In a way, it is almost like investing in one's own company, because ultimately the net result is expanding one's own revenues and business and valuation. The second and perhaps bigger reason is to keep the entire AI game, the gains from it, within the control of a small cohort of companies. NVIDIA's investments ensure that OpenAI sticks to it for its chip needs. Microsoft's investments ensure it has a guaranteed chunk of the AI cloud business from OpenAI. Google de-risks itself by investing in a competitor, Anthropic. Amazon invests in Anthropic and OpenAI to stay in the game and also bring all AWS clients within the same ecosystem. Remember that AWS not only powers 90% of Fortune 100 companies, but at the same time, 92% of its clients are small and medium businesses who spend less than $1,000 per month on AWS services. That's the massive range, that ecosystem that Amazon has in the corporate cloud computing space across the world. Everyone depends on it. So this circular funding not only increases revenues and valuations for AI and tech giants, it also ensures that the AI business stays within the control of just 8 to 9 companies, making it almost impossible for smaller players to break through. And this massive concentration of finance and wealth is clearly showing up in both the economy and the markets. Take US GDP growth in 2025, for instance. The Harvard economist Jason Furman has estimated that this year US economic growth has entirely come from data centers and information processing technology for AI. Without that, the US economy would have grown by just 0.1%. A similar effect can be seen in the US market. 64% of the gains in the S&P 500, the main stock market index in the USA, this year has come just from 7 AI-related companies: NVIDIA, Microsoft, Alphabet, which is Google's parent company, Meta, which owns Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp, Amazon, Oracle, and AMD. Without these tech and AI companies, the US markets would have gone up by just 4% or so this year. That is what is worrying everyone. The only reason the US is not in a recession right now is because of AI. And the AI business is structured through these circular funding loops, which is literally like a house of cards. If one key card falls, everything will topple over. By the way, it is important to remember here that just 3 mystery clients account for 53% of NVIDIA's revenues. Mystery because NVIDIA hasn't revealed their names. So think about it, that if one of these gets into trouble, the world's most valuable company, the one which is literally holding up the largest economy in the world right now, could get into deep trouble itself. Why should this worry you and me, you ask? Because if the US goes into a recession or the US markets crash, the entire world will be affected. Big stock market players and investment banks will face a payments crisis. Banks who have lent money to them will not be able to recover their loans. Businesses will find it very hard to raise money, and they will have to cut back on their investments, impose salary cuts, and even lay off a large number of people. You might ask me, isn't that going to be good for us in the long run? After all, wasn't I among those who have warned that AI is causing a white-collar recession across the world? Won't an AI crash help the middle class keep their jobs? Perhaps that will happen in the long run, but as Keynes famously said, in the long run, we are all dead. But what do you think? If the AI economy falters, will it be good for us middle class professionals? Or will the inevitable economic slowdown make things even worse? Let me know in the comments and respond to other people's comments as well. Let's get a discussion and a debate going on this, because no one really knows what can happen and what is going to happen. And while you are at it, do subscribe to my channel, like this video, and share it with your friends and family. Until next time, goodbye.